Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of School Directors Academic Affairs meeting. Oh my gosh, my computer's falling off its stand. There we go, that's better. You know me, I want to start off with a major bang. We are excited to be here together today. It is 5:30 on March 12th of 2024 for this virtual academic affairs meeting. And as I had mentioned to some of our board members in advance, don't be confused by these four bullet points. We have a lot to talk with you about tonight. We have a lot of really exciting projects that have been going on for, in some cases, months, and in some cases, a couple of years, and they have come to fruition. So we're really excited and proud to bring it to you. So we're going to talk about some curriculum resource adoptions. We have some recommendations on programming, which include some staff additions that we'd like to talk through with you. And then I've asked Mr. Lutz to join us to talk about two major projects in our technology office. So with no further ado, I want to make sure that everybody in the room knows everyone. So our board members are here, and I'm going to introduce Mr. Brandon Lutz, who is the Director of Technology. Brandon, you want to wave to the people? John Fears is here. He's our middle school department coordinator. Mr. Fears, thanks for being here. Megan Simica is here. She's our high school science coordinator. Hi, Megan. Mr. John Schwartz is here. I think this is his first time with all of us. John is a new member of our health and physical education program. He is the health and PE teacher at Enfield, and I'm excited that he could join us this evening. And Kate Whitaker is here, who is a high school computer science and career education teacher. That's how it came across my office. I think I got everybody who's a guest appearance. And then, of course, not to be undone is our building principals are all in attendance this evening also. And our assistant principal, Dr. Scragan, is here. So thank you all for freeing yourselves up. We have a big panel tonight because we have a lot to talk about. So without any further ado, I'm going to get us started. I want to talk about curriculum resource adoptions, and we've shared some information on our process before, but given how significant the projects are that I'm sharing with you tonight, I want to make sure that our board members are comfortable with our process and know what a thorough process and how much has happened before we bring a recommendation to you. The district does have a process, as I'm sure those of you who serve on policy committee with me also know, is that we have a policy, board policy 108, which is adoption of textbooks. And we interpret that also to mean primary resources for a core class. And so our process is explained and outlined on our website. We do our due diligence in researching products before we even bring them to our teachers and our committees to discuss. And we do curriculum review in natural cycles. We have about a 6 to 7 year cycle for every program area to be reviewed. We got a little off track for a little while with maybe you remember that COVID thing, where we were not focusing on these kinds of proactive parts. We were sort of in survival mode, but we have been back full in on our curriculum projects for the last couple of years, and working hard to make sure that we have the most up-to-date programming in place for our students, and then identifying appropriate resources to help to move those along. So the process is explained on our website. Broadly speaking, once we've identified a subject area where we've determined we need additional resources, we go out and look for them. We start with on core curriculum in science, math, and ELA. We are able to use a not-for-profit organization called Ed Reports that provides us information on a screening and an independent rating on whether or not the product is well aligned to standards, usable to teachers, transparent and clear. So that's our first screening opportunity. Not all materials end up there. We'll talk about that with biology, for example. But that's our starting place. That's how we get started. So we started with, in some cases, I think in ELA for K-5, we started with at least 10 or 12 products. In middle school science, Mr. Fields will correct me later, 7 or 8 products. And high school biology, I think we started with 6 or 7 in the beginning. So we start with a wide array, but we all along the way keep records of what we're looking for. So we start with looking at a particular unit of study, making sure its standards align, and then sort of shrink the field based on some parameters that have been established and used by the department. Then we do another more in-depth review, looking at more specific items that are well described either by the literature as being appropriate, whether it's by a governing board or in our case around the projects today, making sure that they are standards aligned. So we try to make sure that we're finding things that align with our vision of what we want for our students, while at the same time providing engaging resources for our students who want to access them, but good for our teachers also. And then the third place is we have a vendor come and present to us. Usually we have finalists of 2 or 3. They come and do presentations, and then we rate the presentations along with everything else before bringing you a recommendation. So all of that has happened. Our point of pride is that we do that with a really teacher-led point of view. So while administrators are in the program or in the process and engaged in the process, we certainly lean heavily into the experts, which is our teachers and our professional educators who know a lot about what our kids and they need. And so we work hand in hand. So the teacher committees make recommendations to the administrators then make a recommendation to all of you. Is there any questions about our process that I can answer before we sort of start to talk about the projects themselves? Dr. Yannicone, did I miss anything? Great. Oh, I had a slide for that. Here you go. There's the whole slide that says all of the things I just said that I forgot to advance. And so we present them to you for approval. Assuming, depending on your approval this evening, it will then go to the full board next week to vote on. As you're about to see, these resources do not come at without a cost. And so we want to make sure that you know what it is and why it is we're recommending the cost of these projects in the way that we are. All right, so with no further ado, I want to get started with elementary. This has been a labor of love. Mr. Spiker, Dr. Markle, and I have met with a committee of teachers from the elementary, both elementary schools, teachers, reading specialists, instructional coaches, special education teachers along the way to help get us to this place. And so, Mr. Spiker, Dr. Markle, would either of you like to sort of talk about our recommendation?
I can kick it off, and Megan definitely chime in. Just to echo what Dr. Johnston said. So we met basically every Monday afternoon from mid-October to yesterday with 16 faculty members from Erdenheim and Enfield together to do that deep dive that Dr. Johnston described, like looking at our current program, what was going well, like what we felt were gaps, like looking at a whole bunch of curriculum, and then narrowing it down to 2 finalists, and then the recommendation now for Amplify CKLA. I think a couple of things that we really liked about this program. It is very much what's called a knowledge building curriculum. So what this is I would say, some evolving research and some evolving best practices in the past 5-10 years in elementary literacy. The idea that you shouldn't just be teaching students reading skills in isolation, right? How to make inferences, how to summarize, how to find the main idea. That those are useful things to talk to kids about for sure, but without the vocabulary and the language and the content knowledge of what you're reading about, you won't be able to make heads or tails of a complex text. And so CKLA, a real big part of it is this idea that almost all the units K-5 have either a science or social studies theme, right? So the American Revolution, the solar system, the human body, ancient Rome. And within those units, students are reading a variety of high quality fiction and nonfiction texts over the course of those 3, 4, 5 weeks to really get a deep dive into that content. And that's the content is sort of picked to span vertically and horizontally, so kids are building knowledge over time. They're not just sort of studying random interesting things. They're studying things that are really foundational to them as students, to us as American citizens, to understanding the world around them. And so they're learning how to read by reading interesting, complex, meaningful information. So that's like a big thing. I'll pass it over to Megan, hopefully in a seamless way over to Dr. Markle here to jump in. What else do we like about this product?
Yeah, and not only this product, but just the whole process. Um, we by the toward the end of before we were recommending just this, we had two really strong products. But I just want to shout out the committee. We had lots of really meaningful conversations. The committee members spent a lot of time on their own, doing deep dives and reaching out and researching on their own, and they were just really invested in this whole process. And we really do. We're excited. We feel Amplify CKLA will really meet our needs, and really support the type of learners we have here at Springfield. So we're excited to get started. We're hoping the school board will take this recommendation. And I already have teachers, getting ready and saying like, "Hey, can we do this?" I'm like, "Let's just take a minute. We're gonna make sure that it's adopted." But we're excited for this. Anytime that we can get teachers excited and students are excited as well. We've had different resources in the buildings, and so teachers have been taking a look at them. And so it's been a really great journey. I've appreciated working with Dr. Johnson and Mr. Spiker through this as well.
The ELA project is unique in that both elementary principals were heavily involved throughout, primarily because it's 2 hours of every day of an elementary school student's learning. This is a huge component of our educational program, K-5. And so they have been instrumental in helping us get here in our weekly planning meetings. This is complex work, as many of you know, because we've talked about it at this group, sort of the changing face of the teaching of language arts and the teaching of how to read and how to write is shifted exponentially over the last few years, and really leaning heavily into the science of what we know. I exchanged an email with a colleague this morning, and sort of that was the conversation, was what we used to always do in special education has become the norm of what we ought to be doing in core education, making students have this, sure that they have the skills in their foundational skills in order to comprehend. And they have to lean heavily into that knowledge base. So our recommendation to you is for the purchase of an 8-year license, both digital and hard copy materials for every student for the next 8 years of Amplify CKLA, including a 1-year professional development project. The total cost to the district is $521,679.20. We may be back with other resources over time, but this is the primary source. They have some other resources we are considering later for either our special education learners or those students who receive direct reading support from a reading specialist. I told you we get feedback from our staff. These are some quotes from all of them. Our literacy instructions should be research-based and should meet the needs of our students. I think CKLA offers rich resources that will help students develop their background knowledge. I think CKLA will help students become readers and, more importantly, thinkers. I believe this resource is engaging, equitable, and accessible for students and teachers. It will prepare our students to become critical thinkers, have collaborative conversations, and learn to read for meaning. The kids are going to love this program. They get to grow their knowledge, reading and writing every day, informal writing every day, truly a universal access program. It's going to be so good for them. You should know that when we went into this project, the focus on making sure we were developing solid writers was a primary driving factor in the committee's assessment of our strengths and needs as a district. And so writing was a huge component. And what we like about how this program works is, yes, there are some big projects, but it's a lot of little writing all the time. So they get lots of practice, and it really builds the solid foundation in the early elementary ages for the way students learn to write while they're learning to read. The depth of knowledge that students will be exposed to is enormous and good for all of our students. And finally, CKLA offers a solid foundation in phonics and phonemic awareness, as well as a broad range of topics, of knowledge building topics. The skills are taught to mastery. The expectations for writing are more aligned in a developmentally appropriate way. And so our faculty were really on board. 90% of our faculty who were on the committee voted for this particular resource, which was a very decisive decision. We've heard from other school districts that it was, and when they've done this process, much closer. We had, like Dr. Markle referenced, we had 2 really great products, but we think this is the one that will really align to our profile of a graduate and our vision for our learners the best. And so it is our recommendation to all of you that we proceed with Amplify CKLA. What questions do you have about this project or this product that we can try to answer for you?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to appreciate the process that goes in before a recommendation even comes to the board. So thank you for that first beginning explanation of how everything is reviewed on several levels before it even gets to this level. And then I just also want to cheer the involvement of the teachers working collaboratively with the administrators, the special education teachers, the reading specialists, just working all together as a team. And it was really encouraging to see their response and excitement around the new curriculum, because they're first line with the curriculum, and they're gonna do a lot of the work next year to make this happen. So it was good to see that. Then also the support that's going to be provided. I think I saw a year-long support provided with this initial program. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Green.
I would just also piggyback on what Mrs. Green said. I agree with what she said. And I also like the collaboration of the two elementary schools working together to choose a program that moves across the whole elementary level. So I like that too.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mrs.
to
Hubley.
everybody who put their time in there.
I
Thank
just
you.
have a quick question. So I know you said this is, I think, 8 years,
Yes,
and it was like 560,000, something like that.
yes.
Or 520, sorry. In terms of other products, and I'm not saying this is good, bad, and different. I just
Mhm.
was looking for like a point of reference of
Mhm.
other products in terms of cost and years of agreements. Like, does this align with other products? Is this low on target, high? Like, where does this fit?
Question. So I'm going to answer the 8-year agreement first. We used to get, when I first started in the role, we were getting 6-year agreements, but what we found was that was a little tight. We're actually ready in like year 7 to start the review and in year 8 to launch a new product. And so we moved, it was our request. They sent me 6-year quotes and 8-year quotes, and ultimately our team decided that it would work better for us if we went to 8 years. Gives us enough time to get used to the product, get better with the product, refine the product, and then assess how we're doing over enough time that we'd have enough data points. Does that make sense about the quote length?
Yes.
So most of the vendors, although Mr. Fears will talk, and I will talk about the science project, you will see our 8-year agreements where that was feasible from the publisher.
But is that
Re-
cost
rela-
like aligned with other things? With other
So
products?
related to the cost, this product of the 2 that we got final quotes on, this one was a little bit more, but it had really compelling content and materials for students and teachers. And so to us, the difference in cost was negligible. This was more, but it was negligible over the 8 years when you added it up over the 8 years. Thank you. Any other questions?
I apologize if you shared this information, but what were the other programs that were considered?
We had a list of 10. Our 5 like semifinalists were Into Reading, which is an HMH product, Benchmark Advance, which was actually a finalist, Wit and Wisdom,
Wonders.
Wonders, and one more. What am I missing? Oh, CKLA
That's right.
was the 5th one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm looking for guidance from all of you. Are you okay to make this recommendation to the Board of School Directors for a full vote on Tuesday night?
Okay, absolutely.
Yes, I would support that.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. All right. Sorry, I moved those back. Our second product that we wanted to bring to you this evening is our middle school science project. Mr. Fears, are you okay to start the conversation for us?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So I first want to say it's so nice to see all the familiar faces of former students, parents, and other school board meetings. Good to see everybody. So the middle school science has been investigating a new set of curriculum for a couple of years now. Pennsylvania has just last year approved the new set of science standards. They're called the STEELS standards. And for those of you who are really interested, it means science, technology, engineering, environment, literacy, and sustainability standards. So one of the big things is it's trying to push more towards a phenomena-based science approach. where we try to work more from like real world examples of science learning. We went through 7 or 8 resources, I believe. And we looked at, we did look at Amplify, and we looked at HMH, and we decided that HMH is a nice blend of phenomena-based approach. It gives us flexibility with the phenomena-based approach, as well as giving students a nice foundational base of information and skills necessary to understand the phenomena. In addition, we found that the dimensions gives us a nice interactive or technological base that we can work from. We found that as much as we like Pearson or Savas, we found that the online component is a little bit not what we want. So we found the dimensions to be a little bit better. The team, just like for language arts for elementary school, we've been meeting for a long time, quite frequently, evaluating multiple resources, evaluating what our mission is as a team. And we feel that this program best meets our needs for our students at this time.
Thanks, Mr. Fears. And so as Mr. Fears indicated, we are recommending to you the HMH Science Dimensions. HMH does not offer an 8-year agreement, so we have asked, and they told us that that was not available to us. So we are able to enter into a 6-year agreement, and the cost for our hard copy and digital materials for 6 years for every student is $192,424.44. We again took the feedback from our staff. They shared with us. It's comprehensive, student-centered, and a phenomena-based approach. As Mr. Fears shared, it covers essential skills and topics. It helps students to develop scientific literacy skills and provides scaffolds to analyze findings and communicate with one another. Again, going back to that profile of a graduate that we're using as the center sort of driving force. Supports the exploration of disciplinary core ideas. It includes connections to math, ELA, and engineering throughout the exploration. The hands-on lab as part of the exploration with material kits are provided and incorporates open-ended unit projects that align with STEELS. That was really important to us, is that it wasn't a whole lot of promoting stand and deliver. We don't want that at the high school either, which Mrs. Simica will talk about in a minute. But at the middle level, that's not a thing. Those kids need to be figuring it out and touching it and thinking and wondering and talking with each other. And we really felt like this would do that for them under the guidance of our teachers. It is designed to engage students through hands-on activities, real-world applications, and inquiry-based learning, promoting a deeper understanding of science concepts. And then, of course, those foundational science skills of observation, inquiry, experimentation, data analysis, and scientific publications are key to these activities. They're not just made up from, they make sense, and they're grounded in things that middle level learners will find interesting and engaging. So as our final checks were, it was related to it, as we've talked with this committee about for the last year and a half, PA STEELS alignment is in place. They are actually publishing some additional resources just for Pennsylvania to align to the STEELS that we're anticipating to get in the next few weeks. We have opportunities for integrated cross-discipline learning. So we can make some choices on how we organize the units and modules of study. The digital resources support all learners, allowing us to adjust and provide accommodations to those learners for whom would do a better listening to a resource than reading it. And ultimately, the most important thing to me and to Ms. Dr. Fuller is that it's been recommended by the middle school science teachers. Dr. Fuller, anything to add beyond what Mr. Fears and I have shared that you want to put in?
No, I mean, I think my favorite thing about this product is that it comes in modules, right? And so like those modules you said it, we can organize those modules in any way we want. We can make them discipline specific. We can spread them out over the course of 3 years and give a little bit of everything over 3 years. It provides us with a lot of flexibility in terms of how we implement the science standards. And I also like that, it gives us flexibility in terms of time. We've already talked about the middle school building project and the middle school scheduling project, which obviously intersects with any curriculum that we that we adopt and any resource that we adopt. So I think it'll fit nicely and be adaptable as we go through those transformations over the course of the next few years.
Well said.
Thank you.
So with that, I ask our committee, any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question. So this is targeted just for the middle school, right? So just for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much for all of the investigation and information that you provided. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. Teretosky.
Thank you, and I ditto that. I really like the real world connections that are going to take place, and then also across the disciplines, which is wonderful. And that's going to be hands-on and interesting because we want our students to really dig in middle school, and you don't know. Definitely will happen with Mr. Fears because I've had Mr. Fears. So I'm excited for the students that will move through those classrooms and really gain an interest for science. That's going to be birthed right here. So I'm excited about that.
Thanks, Mrs. Green.
I'm just gonna let Carla keep speaking for me because she says everything that I'm thinking, but I also really like the cross-discipline learning. And again, I appreciate the time and energy that went into deciding on this. You know, I've always felt like the middle school had a good science program, so I'm glad to see that we're continuing that.
Excited about it too, and I think Mr. Fears wasn't wrong. We've been talking about this, thinking about it, looking at things for a couple of years and just couldn't land on anything that felt right for us. And I think it's really exciting that we came to easy consensus that it was so right. It was so evident to the entire science department. So I thank them for their leadership, much like the K-5 ELA committee, excellent work and really sharing their vision for science education at the middle level.
And
With
thank
your
you,
okay.
Dr. Johnson, for your leadership as well.
Oh, thanks, John. Board members, are you okay for me to place this item on the agenda for vote next week?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Fears, you are welcome to stay and hang out with us if you would like, or alternatively, if you'd like to have something else that you need, your family needs you for, I understand that as well. It's up to you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Our last, but certainly not least, building to the pinnacle of our time, Mrs. Simica is here. She is the science department coordinator at our high school. Once we've done all our work at the middle school, we send our children off to the high school to really delve into those discipline specific, course specific. So today we're only talking about a biology resource. We will bring other resources along the way. We're doing one at a time. So the first is up today, and Mrs. Simica is here to talk about biology.
Hi, I'm Megan, and so similar to what Mr. Fears was saying, so the biology course needed a new resource, and we're also in the middle of a curriculum rewrite. And one of our visions for our biology curriculum is to have it be phenomenon based, and we really wanted to get some different hands-on labs that students could be exploring the content and relate it to real-world applications. So we're planning to do that through phenomena and also different case studies. So the recommended resource is the Miller and Levin biology textbook. And what it can offer us is it has lessons that are based off of phenomena, and it starts each science unit, each biology unit with a case study that relates to real-world application, which I find it really helpful to start my units with a case study and then bring all of the content relating it back to that case study. So we did a lot of research, myself, I teach biology, with the other biology teachers, work together, figuring out how each unit can fit in with our curriculum. And we really like how that would match. And it not only meets the needs of our current vision of keeping students inspired and getting interested in science and relating it to their lives, but it also meets the needs of all of our learners. So we have lots of different level learners in there. We have different languages that we want to be mindful of. So there's an online resource and a hard copy resource. And the online resources allows visual aids. It allows differentiated content, which is just a huge bonus for us in our classrooms.
Mrs. Simica. So as she indicated, sort of, we are recommending the Miller and Levine book. We did look at other resources. This one was so significantly recommended by the department. We actually didn't have any other finalist. This was the finalist for the high school science biology course. We are recommending an 8-year agreement with them for student and teacher materials. As we said, each student will have a textbook. And the cost of that purchase is $28,888. I couldn't have gotten the 0 cents again if I tried. So I was pretty excited about that. Our faculty again provided some input as to why they thought this was a good idea. Has practical reading strategies, visual learning aids, and English learner resources. And again, you'll see that's based in Steele's instruction. Our team worked really hard to try to be forward thinking. We're still getting guidance from the Commonwealth on what Steele's means to all of us and what the final tests, both at the 5th, 8th, and 10th grade will look like. And so we're trying to navigate the future a little. So we felt strongly that this gave us the most flexibility to do that. They liked that it was student driven. As Megan talked about, the real world phenomena in each unit focuses on a long-term problem. And then the resources are really fresh and updated for high school students. We're relying into podcasts and insights and data trends and research in the educational landscape, really making biology real for our students.
It
I
also,
don't mean to.
sorry, there was also
No,
one other cool feature where we
please.
have there's resources in each unit that could allow students to practice and then also use like self-guided troubleshooting. So if they get questions wrong, it doesn't just tell them the answer, it tells them where to find it in the textbook, which visual aids to reference. So we really liked that portion too.
Yeah, I forgot about that part. They'll create personal solutions and applications and engage in discussion supported by evidence. They want to focus on the standards, but they also want us to focus on our skills. And so ultimately, I think we felt really strongly that this was a great resource. And so we were bringing it to you. Our final checks, of course, was access for all learners, aligned to our new standards, recommended by the team, and then integrates those cost-cutting concepts and disciplinary core ideas, which is the foundation of the Steele standards. Board members, questions we can answer?
I just wanted to say, one, I love the case study idea, and I love that the access for all learners. And I also like Ms. Simica's excitement about it too, like that, and it lets you know like you picked the right thing. So thank you for sharing that.
This is Hubley. Mrs. Green? Uh-oh, I think we lost her. Anybody else while we wait for Mrs. Green to reconnect?
I just want
Mrs.
to
Bell?
understand, this is different than the others. The others are a program and then this is a textbook. Is that the difference between this and the other two that we talked about before this?
This is a one course resource. So the difference is we talked about all of middle school science and all of K-5 ELA, every student every year for a span of years. This is one time, one course per student. Students are only taking biology one time.
Okay,
Does that help? So it's a
Yes.
textbook and a program. It has teacher materials and resources, but it's a high school textbook.
okay, thank you.
And just based on what you've shared, my sense is that the model of learning that kids will be exposed to in the middle school will help to prepare them for this model of learning at the high school. So I'm happy to see that we're working to ensure that our kids have that consistency and preparation along the way. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Taratuski.
Mhm.
Unless there are other comments, are members of the board fine for me to make this recommendation to the full board next week?
Yes.
Great.
I am good with that. And it looks like we may have lost Mrs.
I
Green.
know Mrs. Green, I think, got lost for a second, but I'm sure she'll call back in.
Okay.
She froze and then disappeared, so I'm assuming her phone gave out. Mrs. Simica, Mr. Fears, thanks again for being here. You are welcome to stay through the rest of the presentation, but feel free to excuse yourself when you're ready. Dr. Rittenhouse or Dr. Scragan, I'm so sorry. I was like focused on who was on the screen. Anything you wanted to add? Dr. Lee said no?
Thanks to the biology department for all their hard work.
Did a fantastic job. They worked really hard. So that's a big project. Like, it's a big deal to make these decisions and try to think about what's best for our students now and 8 years forward. Like, that's a heavy lift, even for the best of us. And so I really appreciate them doing that while they're teaching full time.
And we appreciate Megan's leadership at the high school too. So thank you, Megan.
Thank you all. That concludes our recommendations on resource adoptions. So are there any questions about the 3 resources that we are recommending?
Nope. I'm good.
All right.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry.
Of course. No,
And
of course, please. That's what you're here for.
I
That's
know,
the
and
point.
I don't want to make it sound like I'm always focused on like money stuff,
Mhm.
but I always think about that because this whole educational thing that now I've been exposed to, things are so much more expensive than I would have ever imagined. So is there something that looks at like, okay, so you have this 8-year agreement, say for example, I don't know, ELA, I think that was an 8-year agreement, so that you evaluate it, but if somebody comes forward in like 4 years and it's like, oh, wait, I got this great new program, that it's kind of like, no, wait, we can't do this because we're in this 8-year agreement and we're kind of tied into this.
Yes
Not
and
to be
no.
locked in, but like more like so that we're getting the money's worth, the value of 8 years and not changing something sooner than that.
It's a really important point, and we've talked about it a little bit. That's why we have review cycles. And so halfway through, I'm going to stay with ELA because that's the example that you raised, but it applies to every project we have, is a few years into the project, we start to look at the data. And several years ago, Dr. Markle and I were involved and Dr. Yannico, when she was the assistant superintendent, in examining our ELA data in our previous program, which was Journeys. And so we were starting to notice a trend that in 2nd and 3rd grade, we just weren't seeing the development of the foundational skills the way we had anticipated. So we didn't wait until it was time to renew several years later. We went in and looked at that particular area of concern and got an additional supplemental resource called Foundations that we implemented then K-3 to build a stronger foundation of skills. So we continue going with our core resource because we believe it's the right thing. But if we find that there's a component or a piece that the data is suggesting students are not acquiring from the curriculum, we go and find some supplemental resources, materials, or lessons to help fill that gap.
You can't go back to the company that you got it from to say, hey, we need this, or we need, like, it doesn't work that way.
I mean, we can share our feedback, but they tend to be national companies, and they have different kinds of answers. I'm trying to figure out a polite way to say it. You know, they're selling a product, so it's our job to see. It might work well for another district, but it just, for our students, what we were noticing was we had a concern.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Anything else? Okay. So we also wanted to bring to you some other programmatic recommendations. And so we're looking to make some additions, some changes, and some removals across our K-5 program. And our next guest of honor is Mr. John Schwartz, who's our new health and PE teacher. And so Mr. Schwartz is well aware that we are interested and have determined a need, going back to that question around needs, around increasing our access to health education for our youngest kids, K-5. Mr. Schwartz, are you okay to just to sort of talk about our rationale and why we need a health class?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Dr. Johnson. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for allowing me to be here this evening. Dr. Johnson approached me in the summer around July and asked if I'd be willing to kind of embark on bringing our health curriculum down to the kindergarten through 5th grade level. And I was really excited for that. I do have a little bit of history in building up elementary health programs, so I was kind of excited to do it again. I think it's very important to give these students the knowledge and the skills needed to make healthy decisions. I think oftentimes it gets overlooked, and kind of health and physical education is kind of looked at times as just kind of the let's get out and let's let these kids run and burn off their energy. And we've really kind of noticed that there is a need for a structured health class in addition to physical education and movement. I was excited to really kind of get the ball rolling with this. I was working, me and Bill Cruson over at Erdenheim are working really hard on this together to kind of identify the needs and really make recommendations and start building out units that are going to be useful for the students to kind of build their health knowledge. And basically just the goal would be to have the students really understand what goes into their health, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally and socially. So we really started working out and kind of figuring some different recommendations that we would make to hopefully bring on an additional health educator to bounce around from the different schools. Some of the units of studies were focusing on health and behaviors, safety, body functions in the kindergarten level. And then as we kind of build that foundation, we would kind of spiral it, reinforce some of the programs that we reinforce some of the skills that they would get into kindergarten as they move into first grade, second grade, and all the way through fifth grade. There's a lot of content there, but we would really try to focus on the skills to put the students in charge of their own health and healthy decisions. So that's kind of where we are with that. And we were really hoping to move forward and kind of frame out these units and really come together to have something more tangible as we kind of move forward into next school year.
Thanks, Mr. Schwartz. Mr. Schwartz is our newest member of our health and PE faculty across the district. He's already made an exponential impact. I know the kids love him. You cannot walk past that gymnasium at Enfield when you walk in the door. You know when Mr. Schwartz is in there because you can hear them all coming. They're having a great time. It's really fun to watch. So make sure that the team knows that as well. So just backing up a little, this didn't come out of nowhere. We really have been talking about this for quite some time, that one of the things that we think we can strengthen is students entering into adolescence with a stronger foundation in understanding the self-control and the options that students have to make healthy choices as they get older. And we think that starting that health instruction as we currently do in sixth grade is waiting too long, and that by beginning that work earlier, students will have a stronger toolkit upon which to call upon as they get older and have more and more complicated decisions to make about their health and their well-being. And so in the same way that we did the same with social emotional learning several years ago, we started with the youngest students and moved it along up. We believe that we have an opportunity to provide this health instruction. However, to do so requires the addition of another faculty member. And so the Finance Committee will hear a recommendation in next week, I believe. Dr. Yannicone, is that next week?
It'll be Friday morning, actually.
Thank you.
Friday
Sorry,
morning.
excuse me, Friday morning. It's sneaking right up on us. It's a busy week of committees. Property was this morning. And so the Finance Committee meeting will hear a recommendation for our budget, which includes the request for a full-time certified health teacher. That person will work across both elementary schools, seeing every student for between 12 and 15 sessions over the course of the year. We haven't yet laid into is the fall, like the first semester, the K2, and the second semester grades 3 through 5, or are we doing half and half throughout the year? Once this is approved, we'll sort of finalize that recommendation on how we deliver it. But the idea is that the teacher would be pushing into a classroom and providing a 30 to 40-minute health lesson within the core classroom. This will also allow us to reestablish our elementary swim gym program. Mr. Cruson is very excited to work with Mr. Spiker and Ms. Mack this year to reignite that program at Erdenheim this year. He has a student teacher, so we have some additional flexibility, and then hopefully this other person will allow us to continue to rebuild that program. And the most exciting for me is that we were able to offset some of the costs through Dr. Lutz's work in writing some grants and getting some grant funding to assist in offsetting some of the costs for that first year. As Mr. Schwartz said, the grade levels will focus on healthy behaviors and safety, sort of developing complexity over time, and then moving in that at Erdenheim into dimensions of health and injury prevention, understanding disease, and then really the more complicated issue that fourth and fifth graders are routinely taking on right now, lifestyles, choices, stress, body systems, and of course, puberty. And so it is our request that we get support from academic affairs to proceed with planning with the addition of this course for our students, and then adding an additional staff member to provide the direct instruction. What questions might you have?
I don't really have any questions, but this is definitely a long time coming in terms of preparing students as in elementary school with extra support in health, especially in regards to stress and safety and all those self-control, all those kinds of things that will feed into the middle school. It's better to start earlier to build those foundations, to build those routines, to have so the students are aware of their bodies. And so I think this is a long time coming, and thank you so much for moving forward with it.
Thanks, Mrs. Green.
Dr. Johnson, just to clarify something. So there isn't like a set program that you would be purchasing. The health and PE teachers would create the lessons that go with each of these topics, correct?
It's a great question. We're not ready to say that yet. We're still we wanted to build out the proposal and make sure that it was approved before we spend a lot of time also
I got you.
Going too far ahead of ourselves. So we might be back. There's a lot of publicly available materials. And so whether or not we're in the first year, we're actually having a difficult time. There's only one textbook I've been able to find that's a series. Right. So we may be leaning in. The CDC actually publishes a lot of information that can be used at elementary health. So I think we're going to lean in on those materials. Mr. Schwartz, did I get that right?
Yeah, there is a lot of information out there. The SHAPE standards, which is kind of like the national standards that everything is built off of. It's a really robust program, and it gets individualized as you go through the states. So there is a lot of resources out there that we could utilize, especially for what we're trying to do in terms of the 12 to 15 classes per grade level. So as far as finding resources, there might be things that pop up here and there, but there is a lot out there that the kids could benefit from.
Thanks, Mr. Schwartz. Mrs. Hewley, did that answer your question?
It did. I was going to say thank you for the clarification.
Question. And this be something that would develop maybe even over the summer through a curriculum project, so that teachers would be working as a team along with whoever's involved, so that those applications are made with the team, with all the resources that are there, unless there's a text that we find.
Plan pending approval from this board and then from finance for approval, at least preliminary approval to move forward. Then we're going to keep working, taking those units. We have them built out to the level of essential questions, but then really turning it into a plan for delivered instruction. We'd like to do that going into the summer so that we're not even sort of last minuting it in the summer. It's a lot of work for those 6th grades, so to really get that outline built out.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So right now, currently, there is no health program then in the elementary schools?
No health program. The teachers have been infusing it into health and PE, and then we have some targeted lessons for 5th graders on puberty. Okay to proceed? Dr. Yannicka, I don't think I need approval from this group today for a motion. Is that right?
Can you not hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. There you are. Karen came through very late. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I just was wondering, could you talk a little bit more about the choice to hire another staff member to deliver this? So what's driving that? Is it the curriculum itself? Is it that, where will it be placed within the school day for the students? Will this be part of health and PE? Will this be part year? Because I guess I'm curious about the additional staff member.
Sure. So we talked about that for a long time. In fact, we tried to pilot Dr. Markle, and even when Dr. McLaurin was here, we tried an idea of piloting, taking some of these health topics and pushing them into the PE class. Mm-hmm. But those of us who have children know that when you have a kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grader, and you say, we're going to sit here in the gym for 15 minutes of our precious 40 minutes of running and playing time to have a targeted lesson, it has not, Mr. Schwartz, do you think gone well? It's been moderately effective. How's that?
Yeah, they really need that full 40 minutes of movement. And then so the health it should be in addition to that.
And so we talked about sort of, okay, so how else might we do it? But because of the number of classrooms we serve in health and PE, we don't have any time left in those teachers' schedules. They are just eking out their contractually promised preparation time. So we can't add another course for all the children, and taking away their PE felt counterintuitive at a time that we know kids need to move. And so sort of after we tried for a year, that was sort of our best attempt. I had spoken with Dr. Yannick, and it was our hope that we could infuse it into the PE program. Dr. Markle, Mr. Spiker, I don't know if you have other thoughts, but we just really couldn't find a way to infuse it. We also decided it would not be a special activity. It would be pushed into the core classroom. So it can be delivered at different times through the day, not just during the health and PE or specials block of the children's day, because we didn't want to take something away.
Mm-hmm. So it would be, so you would still be though, there would still be time where something is being pushed aside. So if you're talking about for instructional day, I guess I'm trying to think a little bit more about when that would be.
Sure. And I think we've talked about this part, once we have this approval, sort of working that through, but we do have dedicated social emotional time, and we feel like this is directly aligned to building out some of that learning. So it would be once a week for a student for 12 to 14 weeks, depending on their age and which grade they're in.
So is there a thought to combine this with instruction for social and emotional learning?
I suspect that there will be some
person. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
For the additional staff member?
So social emotional learning we have delivered by the classroom teacher.
Right. Okay.
So there's not a person, we haven't hired a person to deliver social emotional learning. Instead, we pushed that to our classroom teachers and asked them, because we believed very strongly, and still do, that students need practice and repetition every day, all day with that social emotional. So we needed the classroom teacher to hold that primary responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
This, I think we want to provide in tandem with the classroom teacher so that they're present for the instruction, so they know what we're talking about, but this feels a little bit different. And while we did look at overlap between Second Step and the health standards, there actually really wasn't as many as we had anticipated. Second Step doesn't really dig into some of these more pressing issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
More questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to, express I do fully support the need to, move forward with exposing our students at much earlier ages to some of these health topics. I guess my concern goes towards, we have added quite a few staff. We're looking at budget now this year. So I would kind of defer to the finance committee also to see where the support for an additional staff member can come in at this time. Just expressing caution, not saying that I don't support this. So.
I hear that, and I think that's why we wanted to bring it here along with that finance. We haven't always presented it here at Academic Affairs consistently. We wanted this group of people to know why, from an academic standpoint, we were making this financial recommendation. And ultimately, I understand sort of the greater questions that have to still be answered, which again comes back to why we haven't sort of gone further with our unit planning, because I want approval before we do that.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that we're all able to work on the same page.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Dr. Yannicone, we don't need approval per se. It is an
No, the
informational
actual approval will come as part of the finance committee discussion. We'll start that on Friday, and then later, April 18th, We have a follow-up final budget proposal for next year. We have factored, as Dr. Johnson indicated, we have factored this position into our preliminary budget proposal, which we'll be presenting on Friday, with a component of this new position being covered through grant funding, which we anticipate being able to receive since it's a non-competitive grant. There is a good deal of emphasis over the last few years, and I believe the members of the committee are aware of this. There's been a good deal of emphasis on the mental health and overall well-being of our students. And we do believe that aligning our curriculum overall at the elementary schools to these elementary health standards will help us with some of the concerns that have arisen by parents, staff members, as well as, classmates about some of the things that we're observing in students. If you look right now at what's on screen, the media and viewing is now a health matter, right? It's a mental health matter, the access that students have. In addition to that, self-care and body image, and some of the unfortunately dropping age groups of students who are considering ending their life. We see that this kind of curriculum is really critical to the overall well-being of our students and frankly, their ability to attend to their academics as well. And so we have seen this as a priority. We have, as you indicated, Dr. Taratuski, we have added several positions. We have also reduced some positions in other areas in order to try and help us create some of these opportunities. So we do feel that we can present a budget that's responsible and reflective of the board's goals and incorporate this position. But we'll talk about that more fully with numbers involved on Friday.
I just had one last question, and it was regarding, and I'm not sure what the first two units are here. Is there thought to including drug and alcohol prevention, like weaving that in at this earlier age? And where do you see that fitting in terms of the units of study?
Mr. Schwartz, I'm confident you and Mr. Cruzen discussed that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we said, we are still in the earlier stages of kind of framing out these units, and there's a lot of room that we have, and we want to take as much feedback from everyone as possible. And we do have thoughts into incorporating that into these units as you move into the upper elementary over here at Erdenheim.
Thanks.
Dr. Taratuski, one of the things I think is important, because this is a significant addition to the curriculum for 6 grades. 6 grades, I want to make sure I'm articulating that clearly. Anything that we would be delivering to students would be aligned to the standards that are recommended both at the state level as well as at the federal level. And they would also be, therefore, considered developmentally appropriate. So whatever introductions, for example, lifestyles and choices in the 4th grade, disease prevention, I could imagine drug and alcohol coming up when we're discussing disease prevention in the 3rd grade. If we go back to the earlier grades, things like body systems and choices and actions, I could see aligning. And these are obviously general areas of content, but I believe that once we break into the specific standards, we'll be able to really see that steady growth. And as you know, in your position as a professional, unfortunately, students are exposed more and more to at-risk behaviors at a younger and younger age. And so we do see the relevance of this for all of our students. And even though the standards are different, a nice intersection between the social emotional learning components and the healthy living components.
Thanks.
Any other questions about elementary health? I appreciate the input and the perspective, and we'll keep you updated pending approval from the board. Mr. Schwartz, thank you so much for being with us. You're welcome to stay and join us for the rest of the meeting, but I understand if you want to excuse yourself also.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Dr. Markle, Mr. Spiker, did you have anything else you wanted to say about that before I move on to some high school business? No, we're good. Okay. All right. Last, coming up for us, another guest speaker this evening, Ms. Whitaker is here today. One of the things that we're really excited about is an opportunity to grow our dual enrollment program. And so, Kate, can you talk a little bit about our new dual enrollment program with the University of Pittsburgh and sort of what you're recommending as a result?
Absolutely. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that my audio was working and I see the microphone going. So I evaluated a bunch of different programs, courses based on what I thought complemented what we already had, what was relevant to technology today, and what I thought would be interesting to the students. So the first one is Introduction to Computing for the Humanities. It actually goes along the lines of what I've been doing in my programming course. It does go a little beyond that. So I'm shifting some things around with the programming course. So that is, you're not ready for dual credit, but you still want to start with programming. And then this course, which you can jump to without. And it, again, it goes over almost everything I'm already going over, plus some things beyond that. So I thought that was a really good fit. The next one is Introduction to Information Systems in Society. That one is more of looking at a couple of different areas of computer science. This one has a lot of really relevant things to technology today, as far as it'll look at user interface, human computer interaction, designing technology to be intuitive, that sort of thing. Some cybersecurity aspects. The part that I'm actually really excited about is there is a unit on machine learning. So now with the rise of AI chatbots that are becoming more and more difficult to discern from human interaction, we can now take a look at the behind the scenes part. How are these created? What algorithms are used? What data are we training on, and why we have to be careful on what data we're training it on? So I'm really excited about that one, just because I think it's super relevant with all the new stuff coming.
Things will think so too,
last,
don't you think?
The last one is decision making in sports. This one was a fascinating overlap of statistics and programming. It allows students to see all the stats they see for their favorite players, their favorite teams, look at how we can apply statistics to them to come up with information and make decisions on them. So the statistics part is where we're looking at different, one of those, I don't know how far into it to get, but probability models, different simulations, that sort of thing, and then applying programming, and so that we can look at large amounts of data and come to conclusions based on that data.
I think is really exciting about this project is really finding some real world meaningful ways to connect computer science, foundational thinking and abstract thinking in really real world contexts and applications. So I congratulate you, Ms. Whitaker, on it's taken some time on your part to work out this relationship with Pitt. There seems like they're fantastic, but they have a lot of requirements of you. And so it's taken us a minute to bring this forward. Dr. Scraggin, anything you wanted to add about dual enrollment?
So I'm really excited about the dual enrollment aspect with Pitt, because the per credit cost is actually a little bit less than what students will be paying at Montgomery County Community College, which we're really pumped at. And they have a series of courses, but they have to vet your teacher. So Ms. Whitaker had to actually go to their workshops, had to look at her curriculum, and they had to anoint her to be the dual enrollment person for the computer science courses. So she has gone through a lot of work. We think it's going to be a really strong partnership, because we do have a lot of students that do go out to University of Pittsburgh. I jumped on that before Dr. Rittenhouse did, because I know Harry goes there. One of my sons went there too. So we're really looking forward to hopefully down the road expanding that program.
Thanks, Dr. Z. Members of our school board, any question around these course additions or any concerns on your part?
No questions, but again, I love the added piece to the dual enrollment program at the high school. I think it just gives kids another opportunity. So thank you for the time you put into it, and thank you for getting certified, Mrs. Whitaker.
Yes, and I would like to also thank you for getting certified and then the time that you put into it. And I'm really, again, highlighting the real world implications that will come out of this and using that to inspire students to maybe think a little differently about statistics and become more interested in statistics, which is often looked at as a difficult topic, but the interest level may have more students buy in.
Agreed.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for looking into this. I always think more options for students are better, so that that they can really explore what they're interested in.
Not to worry, we'll be back with a textbook recommendation at our next meeting in April. Mrs. Whitaker will be back to join us at that time. So she already knows she can't leave yet. She has more to talk about, but this was her first part of her presentation. Unless there are other questions, Dr. Chertoski, did you have another question? Sorry, your box was yellow. I just didn't want to miss someone again.
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
There's a couple other changes as a result. Ms. Whitaker, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So part of the process of evaluating these courses is I am the primary teacher of 9 different curriculums. So adding anything means I have to take away something else. And because of that, I had to find courses that I felt confident were good enough to take the place of something I already taught. So as I already mentioned, programming is going to be switched to focusing on the more introductory topics, meant to be sort of you don't feel comfortable jumping straight to the dual credit course. So take this instead, start here at a slightly earlier starting point so that you can be ready. But it doesn't need to be a full credit because we now have the dual credit course to flesh that out even more. And then the removals, I looked at in the case of web design, how we create web pages today is vastly different from when we needed a full course to teach web design. There is so much more elements, cybersecurity, programming that fits into web design that it really shouldn't be called web design anymore. That's actually part of the reason why I chose the Introduction to Information Systems in Society. It does have a web component. So the important things that were in web design are now in that class. Very few students needed the level of detail that these classes get into. So because of that, I thought that they did not fit as well in today's world as they did when they were added. And then future studies, as much as I have enjoyed this class, the number of times I am asked, what is future studies? What do we do in there? Is high. It is meant to be a gifted and talented program for 9th graders to have options beyond just the normal level of courses. And it worked fantastically for that. But now we have so many more options. So many new courses have been added. I have an AP class open to them. They now have this dual credit class that is open to them. And there's other courses in other departments that I am less familiar with, so I can't speak to that. So to have future studies is no longer as important on that level. And then the fact that a lot of people don't know what it is, why it's relevant. I determined that it didn't complement their, or I don't know that complement was the best thing. I don't think it added anything to have it on their transcript for colleges because it is such a mystery class. So I decided that one, maybe it's time to, it's probably time to let that go because it no longer needs to be there to fulfill its purpose. And it introduces a lot of confusion as to what it is.
Thanks, Kate. Any questions around those recommendations going into 24-25?
No, but again, I would say thank you, Mrs. Whitaker, for the thoughtful restructuring of the technology department. You know, I'm sure it's hard to let go of classes that you've taught for a while. I'm sad to see future studies go, as I have a current freshman in college who took it. And at the time I thought it was valuable, but I understand that like life changes, technology changes, and you have to work with that. So thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Hubley. Thanks, Ms. Whitaker. I appreciate you being with us this evening. As everybody else, you're welcome to stay, or if you'd like to excuse yourself, this is a good time.
Thanks, Kate.
Great job. All right, not to be outdone, Dr. Scragan, you want to talk about 2 changes in our science department?
Why, certainly. In analyzing the results of our AP Environmental Science program, talking with Mr. Moretti, he's using data to support the fact that he wants to take it down from 1.5 credits down to 1 credit. Instead of meeting every other day, it would meet just for the fall semester. He set up a program where he could do review with the students during lunch and learn time that would prepare them in May for students he felt that would need that. Also, AP Chemistry is going to change from 1.5 to 1 credit. This also allows, as far as scheduling goes, easier scheduling for students because we don't have any half credits available in the science department. So those are the 2 big changes for AP after looking at the data and talking to the instructors about that.
And I think, Dr. Scragan, you also engaged in taking a look at sort of what AP recommended in terms of seat hours, as well as local school districts, and this puts us back in line with other districts. Am I getting that correct?
That is correct. We did a pretty extensive, I forgot, that seemed like last year, but we actually did it in the fall. We did an extensive look at AP credit from what the AP College Board recommends, and a number, I think it was, correct me, 10 to 12 different school districts that we looked at in the area. And that puts us in line with them.
So we have a couple other changes we're making in the AP courses next year, but these were the first 2 out of the gate. Any questions from the members of our board?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Scragan. Dr. Lutz, I believe this is yours.
It is, thank you. So our high school is very proud to offer a variety of diverse credit options. You've heard about some of them tonight, so that all of our students can work towards a graduation pathway that makes the most sense for their individual post-secondary life. For many of our multilingual students, especially those that are new to our country, we've created a customized experience that matches their educational and credit needs. Pennsylvania has provided districts with some additional guidance on how to best serve our multilingual or ELD students and make sure that they're able to graduate from high school. So beginning next year, we'd like to offer several course designations to help our students learn new skills, capitalize on their English speaking experiences, and then also earn credit towards graduations. These courses that are listed here will be targeted to serve students who score at the entering, beginning, and developing stages on their WIDA access test, which is an annually administered standardized test that's given to all of our multilingual students. So the listed courses would be taught by our high school ELD teacher, Tammy Spohl, and it'll feature support for students in their core content areas, replacement instruction in the English subject area, especially if they're brand new speakers of English. And it'll also provide our students with opportunities to further explore their cultural heritage and languages, especially when they natively speak a second language.
Thanks, Dr. Lutz. And so this is just a reorganization. Many of these things are happening right now. This just boosts intentionality and then provides some consistency to the students and their transcripts. Any questions for Dr. Lutz or Dr. Scragan or Dr. Rittenhouse or I, or me, whichever? Anything?
No, thank you.
No question.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Lutz, not to be outdone, I'm going to call you up for duty one more time.
Yeah. So the school counseling team, as you have heard in many previous presentations, works diligently to support our students across a wide range of topics. That includes everything from career and post-secondary outcomes, course scheduling, day-to-day issues, class meetings, mental health supports, and that includes some of our biggies like suicide and threat assessment protocols. At the high school, where college and career outcomes kind of collide with that everyday mental health challenges that we see with students, the extra counselor is being requested to lower our current 1 counselor to 259 student ratio. Our students on our advisory committees have consistently shared that they would love to have more one-to-one time with their counselors to discuss their post-secondary planning and how their course selections can support this process. So an additional counselor will help students gain access to one-to-one meetings beginning in the spring of their 8th grade school year. It would be a nice warm handoff from that middle school counselor to get them prepared to choose their courses for 9th grade, and then continue multiple times per year throughout their high school career. The ultimate goal of this would be to allow students to more effectively plan for their post-secondary pathway, and then also create course schedules that meet those needs while enjoying access to the counseling support that they need for any of the mental health concerns. I also want to point out that if this position would be approved, we have already applied for a non-competitive grant funds that could be used to offset some of the 2024-2025 school year costs.
Thanks, Dr. Lutz. Dr. Rittenhouse, anything you want to add to that?
Just the one piece that you mentioned, that this is a frequent ask or comment from student advisory. Dr. Yannicone, Dr. Johnson, and I meet with 15 to 20 high school students and our high school advisory each month, and it's that want from our kids to see counselors more often on a one-to-one basis. And when you increase the divisor from 3 to 4, that increases that time. So I'm very excited about this opportunity.
Thanks, Dr. Ritt. Any questions or comments from members of our board?
No, I'm also excited about that because I definitely know firsthand the desire to have more counseling opportunities for students as they move through the high school. That definitely is a concern that students actually discuss among themselves. And I know they discussed that with also with Dr. Rittenhouse and Dr. Yannicone in advisory. So I think this is good timing, and thank you for being able to tap into those grants to offset the cost of the extra person. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Green. Mrs. Hubley, did I see you
again
unmute?
in agreement with Mrs. Green. Shocking. But I'm glad to know that the students were heard, listened to. I, as somebody who has still going through the high school, but I definitely think this is a need there. So I'm glad to see this happening.
I've also been asked to point out that this will help us in terms of our county neighbors, that we will be more in alignment with our counselor to student ratio.
And I think one of the things we continue to recognize is that we can't talk about this profile of a graduate and then not help students determine their pathways forward and really be engaged with their counselor along the way in thinking about, and what they think in 9th grade, what they think in 11th isn't always the same, but helping them make course selections and decisions about internships or opportunities or work study, or where to push themselves or other activities they can add, really does require face-to-face talk and conversation, not currently feasible at all grade levels under our current design. So I appreciate the leadership from Dr. Lutz and helping hear the students and what they were looking for and their requests, and then bringing forward this recommendation. She did a lot of work to get this recommendation together. So I really appreciate that, Dr. Lutz. Thank you. Any other questions about that? This too was built into our recommended budget. Ms. Green is aware. And so Finance Committee will hear about this additional position on Friday as well. Okay. Dr. Z.
Thank you. As you know, there's been a switch with Miss Benson, Miss Benton coming up from middle school to the high school, and she has been collecting data since day one with regards to trying to build a stronger music program. So both she and Mr. Gottesman collected data over the first semester and realized that the way we were working things with our mixed chorus, our concert choir, and symphonic band really weren't working that well to build the program. So what they have requested, and I'd like to try that as a schedule, is to shift our music ensembles to 1 credit. Right now they're at half credits, and students would be signing up both semesters, but I like to have it at 1 credit. I can run it every other day, both semesters. And along with that, the emphasis on mixed chorus was going to be really for beginning students who are singers. Usually it's 9 and 10, but it could be 12th grade too, but just your beginning student. The concert choir, they really were thinking, hey, this is going to be more of our creme de la creme singer group. Typically, again, 11th, 12th graders, but you could have some 9th graders in there. They were actually thinking about eventually starting to have students audition for those types of parts. And then symphonic band as well, to have a full year of band every other day as I run the AP courses, so that those students have that experience, so that if they're preparing for the winter concert, it's the same group of students that are preparing for the spring concert, and you're not trying to bring in new students and try to grab the older students who might be doing lunch and learn. And then along with that, Marlene Thornton and Dan Meter have talked to their students, and their students, based on what happens in Script to Screen. For those of you that don't know that program for Script to Screen, it's a program where students basically storyboard, write, act, costume, direct, produce, sound an entire movie that's shown at the end of the school year. And with the amount of work that students are doing from all different role models or all different roles in the class, they really felt that it's really an honors credit. They do have some students in the past, they've had some students in the past who have taken it as an internship, independent study with them for honors credit. And they're feeling like the students are doing the same amount of work, and that they wanted to move that to an honors credit.
Thanks, Dr. Z. Any questions around our music department shifts for the upcoming school year and the new course catalog? Excellent. All right, one more, Dr. Z.
Okay. Just some minor changes with 9th grade. We found out this year that based on our scheduling, we had about 60 students who were 9th graders based on their courses that couldn't get PE9. We tried everything I could do under the sun to even have I had a course that had I think it was 6 students. It's kind of hard to run a PE course when you're trying to do team games and there's only 6 students. So what we're going to do is we're going to front load, and we're going to request that all students coming from the 8th grade to 9th grade would be registered for that 9th grade PE automatically. Then 10th grade, the same thing. We're finding out with health. We're finding some 9th graders have health. Some students take it as a junior when they really should be taking it as 10th grade. So we're going to, again, ask all 10th graders to have it as a 10th grade course. And the name change would actually be Health 10. It's going to say that's the grade level. And then the PE department approached me with the idea of lifeguarding, but there's a prerequisite skills you have to have for lifeguarding by the in order to get CPR certified and first aid certified and lifeguarding, you have to be able to just hold your breath for so long and carry certain amounts of weights and swim certain lengths of the pool. Some students don't make that, but they feel that students who don't make that requirement for lifeguarding could still benefit from the course. So they felt that with a name change to lifeguarding, to aquatics and lifeguarding, then they could have students actually stay in the course, even if they don't qualify for their lifeguarding certification. And when I thought, yeah, it's more for students. It's a great idea. So that's another change we're requesting.
Thanks, Dr. Z. I think what I'm hoping that you're noticing from this is really trying to take the feedback we're getting from our students and really refining the course offerings to align to building solid programs, but also deepen their skills in a variety of areas. And so I'm excited about these changes. I think they are the health and PE teachers feel like if they can get to know the students in the 9th and 10th grade year and develop those relationships in a more focused group where there's not 9th and 10th and 11th, where they know each other, they can continue to lean in on that idea of community. Any questions, concerns, comments? Okay, thank you for hanging in there. We're almost done, I promise. Dr. Fuller, you're up. We have 2 new extracurriculars to talk about.
Hi, yeah, I'm hoping that this will be the briefest and simplest part of this presentation. So we're requesting 2 extracurricular new additions to our extracurricular programming. One is the National Junior Honor Society, which is directly related to the National Honor Society that we already have at our high school. It honors scholarship, service, leadership, character, and citizenship. And the idea here is that we would use this as a vehicle not only to honor students who exhibit those characteristics, and we have a lot of students who do, but also to help demonstrate for them the relationship between having these gifts and performing acts of service. So for us, as we build the bylaws for the National Junior Honor Society at the middle school, we want to think about how can we meaningfully involve students in service leadership at the middle school in a meaningful way. And then we also want to think about how do we honor those gifts everywhere we see them, because our students come to us with diverse backgrounds and experiences. And so we want to try to make the National Junior Honor Society something that's inclusive and honors those gifts wherever we find them in our students. The second thing that we have here is orchestra. We have 32 students matriculating from 5th grade to the middle school who are currently playing stringed instruments. And some of them are musicians across categories, so that's exciting. We have 1 orchestra teacher. And so like we do with jazz band, we're looking to add some morning rehearsals to our orchestra program as students come to the middle school playing these instruments. And before, as we grow the program and before we think about hiring new faculty members to service that program, we're going to need some morning rehearsal time, and that requires some extracurricular stipending. And so we're excited about it. I'm looking forward to our strings program getting off the ground at the middle school. We do need an assist in that as we have those morning rehearsals. So that is what that's about. So I'm happy to take any questions about either of those 2 things. Okay.
Excellent.
It was simple.
Yeah, it was easy.
That's good, good.
Those recommendations will also go to the Finance Committee on Friday.
Dr. Shelton, can I ask a question about these things also going to the Finance Committee? So ultimately, I guess they make the final decision because they're making the decision about money. Is it shared with them, like, what our thoughts were about all of these things?
That's a great question, Mrs. Hubley. Yes.
Okay.
And to be clear, in Dr. Johnson's comment there about these are in the budget. So ultimately, the final decision of the board, as you I believe you know, will be what is the budget that you would approve for next year. Within that budget, let's say the board asked us to reduce the tax cost relative to the budget that we present. If we believe that these items are priorities, then we may make cuts in other areas. So at the presentation on Friday, we'll share an overview of what's gone into building the budget. And then depending on how the board responds, we'll make adjustments before the final presentation next month. And then obviously the preliminary vote of the board in May, and then the final vote in June. So these are all priorities for us from an educational standpoint. We do understand that there are some, these are fairly small items in the overall cost of the budget. If the board felt significantly that they weren't interested in spending the $550 20,000, I'm forgetting about the final number, in the ELA program, that would have a much more significant impact. But generally speaking, we'll incorporate in our presentation on Friday a summary of all of the items being added.
I guess like my real question was about like potentially hiring new people for programs.
Yes.
You know, I guess I would want, and again, I know like at the end of the day, we all make a final decision, but I guess I would want the finance committee to understand, you know, especially like for me, that high school extra guidance counselor, like, you know, like to understand that we thought that was valuable.
I understand absolutely. And one of the things that before the end of tonight, we're going to need is one of you, and I think historically it's been Ms. Green in recent memory, but we'll need one member of the committee to present that report next Tuesday night. And in your report, you can emphasize anything that the committee feels is essential or, you know, most significant. If there's anything that the committee doesn't feel comfortable with, we would absolutely want to know that this evening, because then we would modify our presentations both on Friday and on Tuesday. And so that's why we always try to make sure the committee meetings are ahead of, this committee meeting being ahead of finance is purposeful, and both committees being ahead of the board meeting is absolutely purposeful. So we appreciate your feedback and questions. It's important for us to feel like we have consensus from the committee before we take anything further along.
One of the things that I have seen across the recommendations is the use of grant funding to offset the initial first year of some of these new changes. And so while I'm not on finance committee in the future, you know, I guess my one thought is how that will impact future budgets if we choose to move forward with these changes. I mean, certainly every change is of value to our students, and you know, I don't know if the finance committee is looking at one number of positions that we've added over the last couple of years, how grant funding has offset them, and then what's now being rolled into the budget going forward. You know, those are just other concerns. And I know, Amy, I don't know if you've sat on finance committee, but those are things that that the finance committee typically looks at, and you know, would hope that, I guess, the presentation at the board meeting would be able to cover, you know, all of that, I guess, is what I'm saying. So
absolutely. And Dr. Tarachewski brings up a really important point. One of the things that we always try to think about as we add new positions is where can we have economy of scale in other areas in order to balance the budget. And I believe, you know, board members know we've been talking about that as a goal for us. So sometimes it's reducing positions in other areas. Other times it's economy of scale in areas like capital funding. We have seen some preliminary budget numbers from the state that we will not have finalized, you know, as well as I do, probably not until sometime in July, but we're not counting on dollars that we may end up receiving to be as conservative as we can be in budget planning, so that when those funds come forward, we actually have a cushion, and we can build that into future years. The other thing that we've been really happy to see is that both the state and federal governments have been really thoughtful about the areas of mental health and safety. And so we do anticipate that these grants may become part of ongoing funding for school districts, because we don't see either mental health or safety as quick shot concerns. These are ongoing concerns, and certainly priorities. So we'll continue to bring that information forward. This morning, we had a property committee meeting about the middle school project. This afternoon, academic affairs, and then on Friday, finance. And the idea is for us as an administrative team, we're sort of integrating our conversations in these three areas to make sure that when we look at the total budget, and in particular, when Ms. Green and I look at the total budget, Kara Green, that we're able to bring forward something that we think is responsible and sustainable for the board to approve.
Just building on what you said, I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to be really transparent with this particular team about why we were making the recommendations from the programmatic side, recognizing that we have partners in the finance side and that we have to marry the two, but we didn't want you all in that position that like, we don't even know that they're talking about it and what it's for. So we wanted to make sure we had a full understanding amongst the full board of the priorities.
I just want to thank you, Karen and Mary Jo, for your clarification about that. And Damien, to speak to what you just said, that's what my concern was. Like, you know, my heart lies in the programs, not in the finances. And so it's like, you know, that's why I think we all come to this with like our skill set. And so making sure like we're all trying to make the best decisions based on what we're most knowledgeable about.
So I just want to add, so at the finance committee meeting, because sometimes we do tend to volunteer to be on the committees where our strengths are. Or when you go to the finance committee, I definitely want them to know that the academic committee is in full support of what you're recommending, so they can understand the impact that that would have on our children. But then also be very clear, which you always are, to address how those finances are going to be covered with grants, and just transparency in that the finance committee may not look as far into what we're seeing in mental health, or the advantage of changing this in the curriculum, or adding the health curriculum, or all of that. They really are doing what they're doing, finances. So really, I like for them to very much so know that we have full support from the academic committee.
I appreciate that, Ms. Green, and I will certainly bring that forward on Friday morning. I've also invited, because there are a number of larger ticket items, Dr. Johnston will be joining us at finance on Friday morning in the event that there are any specific questions relative to curriculum. In addition to that, I do want to say, we start our budgetary planning process in October every year. So by the time we come to the board in February and March with a preliminary budget and proposals for programs or positions, we have vetted all proposals over the course of multiple months, 5-6 months. And so you're seeing the few items that have been approved through a multi-step process. We have discussed other potential positions and programs, and we have said no to them because in the end, my final responsibility is to bring a responsible budget to the full board. And so you would not be receiving information about any of these programs if we had not spent months vetting them. So just as there was a process for the curriculum resource selection, there has been a lengthy vetting process for any staffing requests. And looking at, again, economy of scale. One of the items on the agenda tonight, and Mr. Lutz is here and has been very patient through the meeting, is faculty laptops. Mr. Lutz, I'm going to steal some of his thunder right now.
Oh man,
So,
here we go.
I know the
Off the
faculty
rails.
laptops are coming in under what it cost us for the last 4 years. And so through his work, he's been able to find us savings in another area. And the savings that he's creating on an annual basis in those teacher laptop leases will more than cover the 1.5 positions. It's so there's a big picture for the budget that is Ms. Green, Kara Green's, and my responsibility in order to move these pieces, these chess pieces, to get us where we want to be with students and staff. So rest assured, on Friday we will present all of that. So the only reason why you're seeing the health position and the counseling position is because they've been vetted over months, and they're part of a larger financial puzzle that we've put together that creates, I think, a really strong forward vision for the district, but also a fiscally responsible one. That's
Thanks,
all the
Dr.
thunder I'm
Yannick.
going to steal from you, Mr. Lutz.
I'm going to get to him in 1 minute, but before I do that, we have 2 other extracurricular positions that Dr. Rittenhouse has been waiting to share. He's been waiting for a long time for these 2, so I'm going to give him his couple of minutes in the starshine right now.
Yeah, everybody, and good evening. 2 extracurricular program additions we're requesting at the high school. First is I'll go second, but first on my notes here would be we hope to offer girls volleyball as an official sport during the 2024-2025 school year. In the fall, we have a volleyball club that's existed for 2 years to gauge interest, and we've had sustained success with about 30 students. We're hoping to offer both a junior varsity and varsity program, but we'll have varsity at a minimum. The girls will compete against other local high schools in the Suburban 1 League starting in the upcoming fall. We're very excited about this opportunity. And the Global Scholars Program was brought forth by Herr Martin, who was our World Language Department Coordinator and German teacher at the middle school and high school. And the purpose of that program is to offer students the opportunity to meaningfully select interdisciplinary studies and activities that will lead them to develop global awareness and better prepare themselves for personal and professional success in an increasingly global society. That's the mission statement of the organization. Components of the Global Scholars Program via the Pennsylvania State Modern Language Association would include 1, academic courses, 2 extracurricular activities, 3 service hours, and 4 global literature and media reviews. When students complete those 4 components, they could receive 1 or more of the following: a certificate, documentation on their permanent record on the transcript, and a Global Scholars Cord to be worn at graduation, which would be in blue and green to represent the globe. So there are 2 positions at the high school.
Thanks, Dr. Ritt. Any questions or comments for Dr. Rittenhouse? Okay. All right, last but certainly not least, and Mr. Lutz has been a real trooper to hang in there through this whole thing to have these couple minutes of fame to get us started. We've shared with this committee before. Dr. Yannicone brought our team about a year ago, a little longer than a year ago, some of our preliminary discussion around the idea of how artificial intelligence might impact our schools, our work, and our scope. And so I've asked Mr. Lutz to come and have a conversation with us about it. And then because there's an item on the agenda on Tuesday night about the teacher laptops, we wanted to make sure you were caught up on that also. So our last agenda item for the evening is the technology department updates. Mr. Lutz.
Good evening, everyone. So Dr. Yannicone tasked me with leading the exploration of artificial intelligence's impact on education. So together we established an AI committee and conducted a survey to assess the staff's familiarity and utilization of AI within the classroom. We provided opportunities for committee members to attend an AI summit, while Dr. Yannicone and I engaged in a 3-day professional development session focused on AI. We are currently collaborating with the AI committee to develop guidelines and have initiated the first phase of professional development for staff across all buildings. These sessions aim to explore how teachers can leverage AI to streamline their tasks and enrich their lessons. Moving forward, we will engage in discussion about potential applications of AI for student use. Given the limited guidance for state and federal governments regarding AI, we anticipate developing policies and procedures as more information becomes available. This approach will ensure our strategies are informed and up to date, allowing us to navigate the evolving landscape of artificial intelligence in education effectively. Any questions on AI?
I have assured Mr. Lutz that he will be back when we have a little more time, and we haven't been listening for as long as we have this evening to have a different discussion around AI, but I did want this board to really know that we're not sort of asleep at the wheel. The leadership of Dr. Yannicone and Mr. Lutz is really bringing this to the forefront with our teachers, K-12, to really get them thinking and really sort of be in the forefront of this work. So I appreciate obviously Mr. Lutz's leadership and Dr. Yannicone's support in getting us there and continuing to be leaders in the area. All right, Mr. Lutz.
All right, last one. Yep, teacher laptops. So we surveyed the staff and reviewed 7 different laptops, and we've selected a new professional staff laptop for the 24-25 school year. It's the Asus Flipbook B3 Flip for a 3-year lease totaling $282,401, which is $160,000 savings from our previous lease. Excited about that. This is a 2-in-1 laptop that has a garage stylus, an i7 processor, and 16 gigs of RAM. The current teacher laptops will be used to replace older laptops for support staff.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Lutz on our new teacher proposal for their laptops? Thanks, Mr. Lutz. Great job in saving us some money.
Trying.
Always a win. You work very hard at it. I always appreciate that. You are a bargain shopper. So it resonates with my heart. Excellent job. I wanted us to open it up to public comment, but as of right now, we don't have any attendees that either were with us or hung with us throughout this conversation. So hearing none. Our next meeting date is April 9th, a virtual meeting yet again at 5:30. I promise it will be a little shorter like we're used to, but we do have lots of items growing on my board for us to address together. So it's an exciting time of the year to get ready for next year. This has been a long one. I am incredibly grateful to this board and this committee and all of our representatives from the buildings and central office to come and talk with you this evening. It's so validating to have all your support, ask hard questions, keep us going. But really, we're pleased to bring with you really solid additions to our school program. And so we're really excited. So thank you so much for all the support and the conversation this evening. It's been wonderful. Any final comments from the committee before we
Yes.
wrap up?
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for everything that you do to coordinate this committee and to make sure that we have the information that we need and to really drive this in every building with every principal, with every teacher, working hand in hand with Dr. Yannicone. So I just want to appreciate you on this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Green.
Hi, it's Eileen. I just want to echo the same sentiment, and I just have a quick question for Mr. Lutz. With these deals that you're able to get with the computers and the leases and stuff, do any of these companies ever offer any kind of like discounts to like families who go to the school who want to purchase computers or laptops?
The only company that I'm sure some do, the one I know of, is Dell will do some deals for laptops for faculty and I think possibly students. So I can look into that.
Okay, I just didn't know if when you're making these deals, if that ever comes into play, of any discussions on, hey, we can get you more business, because I'm sure there's, families who would love to upgrade and get a computer to purchase through you if you give us a better deal on a lease for our schools, that's all.
Sometimes there's difference between commercial devices and educational devices too. So sometimes it doesn't really jive to do that. If that makes sense. So
Yep, I just a thought. I know we're already running over, so I don't want to keep anybody, but just a thought. Thank you.
Well, that's why we're here, to sort of continue to make our work thoughtful and as open and transparent as we can and find new ways to grow our programs. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much. Ms. Green, I will send you, unless you'd like me to send it to someone else, the minutes from today's meeting so that you have them for Tuesday. My days of the week are blending together. I'm a little delirious now, I think. Tuesday.
Thank you very much. The notes are very much appreciated. So please do send it.
You got it. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening, and we will see you at the board meeting on Tuesday and back here at Academic Affairs, April 9th. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. Take care.